Imagine you have never seen a gun. You don't know what it is. You don't know what it does. You are a farmer in medieval Europe. You carry a wooden stick for protection. Your entire life, the strongest man in the room has always won. And then someone hands you a small metal tube, points it at a tree 50 feet away, pulls a tiny trigger, and the tree explodes. That moment, that exact moment, changed what it meant to be human. And what happened inside the minds of the first people who held that power? That is what nobody talks about. Stay with me. Because this is not just a story about weapons. This is a story about what happens to the human mind when it suddenly gets access to power it was never built to handle. In 850 AD, a group of Chinese alchemists were trying to create the elixir of immortality. They weren't trying to create a weapon. They were trying to live forever. But when they mixed sulfur, charcoal, and potassium nitrate together and held it over a flame, their laboratory caught fire. Their hands were burned. Their eyebrows were gone. What they had accidentally discovered was gunpowder. For the first 100 years, nobody knew quite what to do with it. They used it for fireworks, for celebrations, for scaring away evil spirits. The idea that this powder could kill another human being took time to arrive. But arrive it did. By 900 AD, Chinese soldiers were attaching bamboo tubes filled with gunpowder to spears. When lit, they shot fire. Not bullets, just fire. These were called fire lances. They were terrifying, but you still had to be close. You still had to look the enemy in the eye. Then came the metal barrel, and everything changed. By 1300 AD, hand cannons were spreading from China through the Middle East and into Europe. For the first time in human history, a person could point a device at another human being from a distance where they could not be touched and end their life with the pull of a finger. Think about what that meant. For thousands of years, power was physical. The strongest man won. The most trained warrior won. A knight spent 20 years learning to fight with a sword. His entire identity was built around that skill. His strength, his discipline, his years of sacrifice. And then a peasant, with zero training, zero physical strength, 0 years of sacrifice, picked up a musket, and in one pull of a trigger, made 20 years of training irrelevant. The knights didn't just lose battles, they lost their entire reason for existing. But here is what historians rarely ask. What did it feel like for the person holding the gun for the first time? There is a concept in psychology called the weapons effect, first studied by researcher Leonard Berkowitz in 1967. The finding was simple but disturbing. The mere presence of a weapon changes how a person thinks. People who were near guns, even without using them, showed measurably higher aggressive thoughts than those who weren't. Just holding power changes you. And for early soldiers who first fired guns in battle, the psychological shift was reported as overwhelming. Accounts from the 1400s and 1500s describe soldiers feeling what can only be called godlike. The ability to end life from a distance you could not be reached from. The ability to be safe while making others unsafe. A power that no human being had ever held before. But here is where it gets complicated. Many of those same soldiers also described feeling deeply disturbed. Unlike a sword fight, where you felt the resistance, where it was physical, where it was real, a gun created distance. Not just physical distance, psychological distance. A sword requires you to feel what you are doing. A gun lets you pretend you are not really doing it. This is what psychologist Albert Bandura called moral disengagement. When we are physically distant from the consequences of our actions, our brain finds it easier to disconnect from responsibility. The further we are from the impact, the easier it becomes to pull the trigger. And this is not just about guns. This is about every powerful tool humans have ever created. Think about social media. You can destroy someone's reputation with a post. You never see their face. You never hear them cry. The distance makes it feel unreal. And so people do things online they would never do face to face. Think about money. The more wealth a person accumulates, research shows, the more difficulty they have feeling empathy for those with less. Power of any kind changes the brain. This is called the power paradox, studied by psychologist Dasha Keltner. Power, when it arrives suddenly and without wisdom, tends to make people less empathetic, more impulsive, and more likely to act as though rules don't apply to them. The first humans who held guns were not bad people. They were just people. People whose minds were not built for the kind of power they had suddenly been handed. And that gap between the power we hold and the wisdom we have is one of the oldest and most dangerous gaps in human history. The gun didn't create violence. Humans were already violent. What the gun did was remove the friction. It made violence faster, easier, and more distant. And when you remove friction from something dangerous, you get a lot more of it. Now here's the part that should make you stop and think. What is the gun in your life right now? What tool do you currently hold that gives you power over others? Power that you were not fully prepared for. It might be a platform, a position, a relationship, a piece of knowledge, money. Because the lesson the first gunpowder soldiers never got to learn, the lesson history paid for in millions of lives, is this. Every new power requires a new level of self-awareness. The problem was never the gun. The problem was the gap between the power of the weapon and the wisdom of the person holding it. Ancient Chinese alchemists were searching for the elixir of immortality when they accidentally created the most powerful instrument of death the world had ever seen. They were trying to live forever. They created something that would end lives faster than anything before it. That irony is not unique to them. It is one of the most consistent patterns in human history. We reach for one thing. We get something we were not ready for. And how we respond in that moment, whether we develop the wisdom to match the power, or whether we let the power outgrow the wisdom, that determines everything that comes next. The first humans to hold a gun had no guide, no warning, no history to learn from. You do. The question is, what are you doing with it?